The airport rush was normal, until a little girl did something no one expected. She walked through the crowded terminal holding a woman's hand, but something was wrong, terribly wrong. She never spoke, never smiled, never looked around. Then, without warning, she tapped her sleeve 3 times. A silent signal no one understood, except one. The only one who noticed was a police dog named Rex. Instantly, Rex froze. His ears shot up, his body stiffened. A low growl rumbled through the terminal, stopping travelers in their tracks. Suddenly, the dog lunged toward the girl, dragging his handler with him. Officer Daniel grabbed the leash, confused. Trained police dogs never reacted this intensely to a child, but the fear in the girl's eyes said everything she couldn't say out loud. Why would a child signal a trained police dog? Within seconds, Rex uncovered a truth so shocking, the entire airport fell silent. Stay with us, because this story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The airport was alive long before sunrise. Rolling suitcases clicked across the polished floors, overhead announcements echoed through the terminal, and exhausted travelers shuffled from one line to the next. It was the kind of chaotic morning where no one noticed anything except their own stress. But Officer Daniel had trained himself to see what others overlooked. Standing beside him was Rex, one of the most trusted K-9 officers in the entire department. The German Shepherd sat tall, ears alert, scanning the moving sea of people with sharp intelligence. Daniel took a slow breath, feeling the familiar tension of early morning security duty. Holidays always brought heavier crowds, longer lines, and higher risks. Families rushed in clusters, couples argued over boarding passes, and lone travelers clutched coffee cups like lifelines. Most officers felt overwhelmed by the noise. Daniel didn't. He trusted Rex more than he trusted any piece of equipment at the airport. Rex shifted slightly, nose twitching at the shifting scents in the air: perfume, leather bags, metal, food, and the undefinable traces of human fear. Daniel glanced down at him. "Easy, boy," he murmured, giving a light touch to Rex's harness. The dog's tail thumped once, disciplined but warm. Across the terminal, a group of children bounced excitedly around their mother, waving small toy airplanes. Nearby, a businessman argued loudly into his phone. A woman struggled with a stroller. Normal scenes. Nothing unusual. But experience had taught Daniel that danger rarely announced itself. Sometimes it hid behind the most ordinary faces. The central doors slid open again as another wave of passengers flowed inside. Daniel's eyes automatically swept the crowd, left to right, right to left, searching for anything out of rhythm. Rex mirrored his gaze, head moving in sync like he could read Daniel's thoughts. Then the first subtle shift happened. Rex's ears perked higher. His body stiffened, not in alarm, but in attention. He wasn't signaling danger yet. He was sensing something small, something human. Daniel frowned slightly. "What is it?" he whispered. But Rex didn't look at him. Instead, the dog stared straight ahead, toward a woman in a bright blue coat walking with 3 children. Nothing seemed wrong at first glance. They blended perfectly with the morning rush. And yet, Rex didn't blink. Something about that family, that moment, that tiny detail in the crowd, had already captured him. Officer Daniel Reyes wasn't just any handler. He was known throughout the department as the man who trusted his K-9 partner more than he trusted people. And there was a reason for that. 3 years earlier, Rex had saved his life during a nighttime warehouse raid. Daniel still remembered the moment clearly. Rex lunging forward, knocking him aside just as a hidden suspect swung a metal pipe from behind a stack of crates. That split-second instinct had changed everything. From that day on, Daniel didn't question Rex. If the dog reacted, Daniel acted. Their bond was more than partnership. It was a quiet language built over countless hours of training, danger, and shared victories. While other officers saw a dog, Daniel saw a soldier with instincts sharper than any human's. Rex had served with him through bomb scares, drug busts, and missing child searches. He could track fear, deception, adrenaline, even medical distress without hesitation. Daniel relied on him not just for safety, but for truth. Rex never misunderstood body language. He never got fooled by tears or excuses. He saw people as they were, not as they pretended to be. Daniel often joked that Rex had the heart of a warrior and the eyes of a lie detector. This morning, however, something felt different. Rex wasn't showing the typical alert signs. He wasn't growling, wasn't pulling his leash, wasn't pacing like he did during high-risk scans. Instead, he had gone completely still, hyper-focused, locked in. Daniel recognized that stillness. It meant something unusual had entered Rex's field of attention. Something subtle. Something important. He gave Rex a long look, memorizing the direction of his stare. "All right," Daniel murmured. "You've noticed something. Show me." It wasn't a command. It was permission. Rex took a step forward, slow but deliberate, tail raised and rigid. His gaze stayed firmly on the family in the blue coat, specifically the smallest girl walking on the far right. She wasn't crying, she wasn't limping, she wasn't showing any physical distress. But she kept glancing back, quick, almost invisible glances, toward Rex. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Kids usually smiled when they noticed police dogs. Some got shy, others curious. But this girl seemed aware, intentional, as if she was checking whether Rex was still watching. "Interesting," Daniel whispered. Rex's ears shot up again. The little girl's hand shifted, small, controlled, almost like a gesture she was trying to hide. That was when Daniel first felt it, the unmistakable sensation that something bigger than a routine morning was about to unfold. At first glance, the woman in the bright blue coat looked like any ordinary mother traveling with her children. She walked briskly, holding the hand of the girl in the mint-green jacket while the two boys followed closely behind. They blended into the morning rush perfectly. No raised voices, no tears, no chaos. Just a neat, well-behaved family moving through the terminal. But the longer Daniel watched them, the more something felt off. The children didn't behave the way siblings normally did at an airport. There was no playful arguing, no clinging to their mother, no shared excitement about planes and snacks. Instead, they moved in an almost formal formation, as if they had been told exactly where to stand and how close to stay. The woman's posture didn't match her surroundings either. Most parents at the airport were stressed, juggling bags, checking tickets, wiping kids' faces. But this woman kept her shoulders rigidly straight, her head high, as though she was too focused on the crowd behind her rather than the children beside her. Rex picked up on it too. His head tilted slightly, nose lifting as he studied the group. Daniel followed his gaze to the smallest girl again, the same girl who had looked back earlier. Her soft brown hair brushed her cheeks as she walked, and her tiny hand clung to the blue coat, but her eyes told a different story. They weren't calm. They weren't excited. They were searching, scanning, waiting. Daniel recognized that look, the look of a child trying to send a message without speaking. He took a step closer, through the crowd, keeping a professional distance but staying within range to observe. As the family paused near a flight display, Daniel noticed another detail that made his breath hitch slightly. Their jackets didn't match the weather. The little girl wore a light spring jacket. The boy beside her had a thick winter coat, and the other boy wore a cheap hoodie. Clothing like that didn't match children packed by the same parent. Not for the same trip, not for the same season. And then came the luggage. The woman carried one large suitcase, but there were no small backpacks for the kids, No toys, no water bottles, no blankets. Children always had something of their own when they traveled. Always. Except these didn't. Daniel's suspicion sharpened. Rex's alert stance confirmed it. Something wasn't right. This wasn't a normal family. And for reasons Daniel didn't yet understand, Rex simply wouldn't look away from them. The woman in the blue coat continued walking, unaware, or pretending to be unaware, of the attention she had drawn. The children followed, their small footsteps echoing across the polished airport floor. Rex's focus never wavered. His eyes tracked them with sharp intensity, reading every shift, every angle, every movement. Daniel felt his heartbeat slow, the way it always did right before something important happened. Then it happened, the moment that would change the entire trajectory of the day. The smallest girl, the one with the soft brown hair and timid eyes, slowed her steps. Just slightly, just enough to fall half a pace behind the woman. The woman didn't notice. The boys didn't notice. But Rex noticed instantly. His ears shot forward, his muscles tightened. Daniel's breath caught. "What do you see, buddy?" he whispered. The girl's tiny hand, previously gripping the woman's coat from the side, shifted behind the woman's back, not waving, not flailing, just placing her palm flat against the coat, steady and intentional. A silent gesture, a signal, a cry for help disguised as nothing. To anyone else it would look like a child keeping her balance, but Rex reacted instantly, like someone had flipped a switch inside him. He rose to his feet, letting out a sharp, low bark, not aggressive, not confused, warning, alert, calling out to Daniel in the language only the two of them understood. The little girl didn't turn. She didn't show fear. She didn't look at the dog or at Daniel. But as she lowered her hand, her fingers trembled, barely visible but enough for Daniel to feel a chill crawl up his spine. Rex tugged on the leash. He wanted to move. No, he needed to move. Daniel stepped forward, weaving through travelers with controlled urgency. His eyes stayed locked on the girl. Something in her face told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't accidental. She hadn't touched the coat for comfort. She had done it because she wanted someone, anyone, to notice. The woman suddenly pulled her phone out, stepping ahead, momentarily distracted. In that second, the little girl risked another look back. Their eyes met, and that single glance carried more emotion than a scream could have. Fear, hope, desperation, and a message Daniel understood immediately. "Please help me." Rex let out another bark, louder this time. The woman snapped her head around, startled. The girl quickly looked forward again, pretending nothing had happened. But the woman's reaction, wide eyes, sudden stiffness, quickened steps, confirmed what Daniel feared. She didn't want the girl interacting with anyone, especially not a police dog. Daniel exchanged a look with Rex, an unspoken agreement passing between them. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. The girl had signaled on purpose, and whatever that meant, Rex had already decided. They were not letting that family out of their sight. Rex didn't wait for permission. The moment the little girl's hand dropped from the woman's coat, the German shepherd surged forward, muscles suddenly taut with purpose. Daniel tightened his grip instinctively, but Rex wasn't pulling out of aggression. This was focus, precision, a deep, instinctive response he had learned over years of training. And he had never been wrong. Travelers stepped aside as Rex moved, their confused glances shifting between the dog and the family. A few people paused, sensing something unusual, but most simply kept rushing toward their gates. No one else understood what was unfolding, no one but Daniel. "Easy, Rex," he murmured, though his own heart had begun to pound. Rex didn't slow. His body angled toward the family, tail stiff, ears pinned forward, nose lifted to the air as though tracing something invisible. Then he did something that made Daniel's pulse spike. He barked, sharp, forceful, and aimed directly at the woman in the blue coat. Not at the boys, not at the crowd, only at her, the woman. Jerked around, startled, her hand flying to her chest. For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Real, unfiltered panic, before she quickly masked it with a nervous smile. "Oh, is everything all right, officer?" she asked, trying to sound calm, but her voice quivered. Rex barked again, louder this time. The little girl flinched. The boys stiffened like soldiers bracing for instructions. And the woman's eyes flicked between them, calculating, tensing. Daniel stepped closer, his badge glinting under the airport lights. "Ma'am, I need you to stop walking for a moment." Her smile froze. "Oh, sure. Everything okay?" Rex circled them, nose brushing the edges of their coats, sniffing deeply. Not for drugs, not for explosives, but for something else. Something Daniel recognized only because he had seen it dozens of times during missing child cases. Fear. Children gave off a unique chemical signature when they were terrified, and Rex was trained to detect it with alarming accuracy. Daniel watched the girl's breathing quicken, small chest rising and falling too fast. The boys looked at the floor, eyes hollow, too obedient for children their age. "Stay right here," Daniel said firmly. The woman tightened her grip on the suitcase handle. "Officer, we're late for our flight," Rex growled. Low, deep. A sound that came from his chest like a warning drum. The crowd around them paused. Heads turned. Even the children didn't move. Daniel locked eyes with the woman. Rex wasn't mistaken. He was alerting to danger. Not a bomb. Not drugs. Not weapons. Something human. Something hidden. Something very, very wrong. And Daniel knew. This was only the beginning. The woman's polite smile began to crumble the longer Rex stared at her. She gripped the suitcase handle so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Daniel had seen hundreds of travelers panic over delays, lost tickets, or forgotten documents. But this was different. This wasn't frustration or confusion. This was fear. "Ma'am, just stay right here," Daniel repeated gently but firmly. The woman swallowed hard. "Officer, please," she whispered, glancing around as if the walls were closing in. "We're really in a hurry. My children—" Rex barked again, cutting off her sentence. The little girl jerked, startled. The boys shrank into themselves, and the woman spun around so fast her coat swung, nearly hitting one of the children. "That dog needs to stop," she snapped, her voice cracking, not with anger, but desperation. Daniel stepped slightly to the side, blocking her path. "He's reacting to something," he said, his tone measured. "Just relax for a moment." Her breathing quickened. "I am relaxed," she insisted, though her trembling hands betrayed her. She kept glancing left, right, over her shoulder, anywhere but at Rex. Then she did something that made Daniel's stomach tighten. She reached down and grabbed the little girl's wrist. Hard. Too hard. The girl didn't cry out, but her eyes squeezed shut in reflexive pain. Daniel's hand instinctively dropped toward his belt, not to draw a weapon, but out of protective instinct. "Ma'am," he said, voice sharp, "let go of her hand." The woman froze, her fingers releasing as if burned. She forced a laugh, awkward and jittery. "Kids. You know how they wander. I was just keeping her close." The lie was too quick, too practiced. The girl didn't move to her side like a daughter would. Instead, she stepped behind Daniel. Just one tiny step, almost unnoticeable, but enough for him to feel her presence hiding in his shadow. Rex moved with her, positioning himself between the girl and the woman, muscles coiled, eyes locked like steel. The woman's face twitched. "Why is he doing that? What's wrong with your dog?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he knelt briefly beside Rex, placing a steadying hand on the dog's shoulder. Rex wasn't shaking. He wasn't confused. He was focused, laser-focused on the woman, as if she carried a truth no one else could see. "Ma'am," Daniel said slowly, rising to his feet, "I'm going to have to ask you some questions." Her reaction was immediate. "No," she snapped. "We're leaving." She reached for the boys, trying to pull them toward the exit walkway. Rex growled, a deep, guttural vibration that made bystanders step back. The boys didn't protest. They didn't cling to her. They just followed because they had no choice. Daniel stepped forward quickly. "Stop." The woman froze mid-step, chest rising and falling rapidly. Something wasn't just wrong. Something was unraveling, and Rex could sense it faster than any human ever could. Daniel's instincts lit up like warning sirens. This wasn't a mother in a hurry. This was someone trying to escape. Daniel's pulse hammered as he watched the woman freeze mid-stride. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes darting like she was calculating escape routes. Rex stood rigid beside him, ears tilted forward, one paw slightly raised, his classic posture when something was deeply wrong. Daniel took a slow step closer, watching everything. Not just the woman, but the children. The little girl's shoes didn't match her clothes. She wore small pink sneakers, scuffed, dirty, and one size too big. The boy on the left had a backpack with a cartoon logo, but the zipper was broken, hanging open as if someone had stuffed things into it quickly. The smallest boy wore no backpack at all, not even a jacket, just a thin hoodie despite the chilly terminal air. Something else caught Daniel's attention. Their luggage tags. The woman had one suitcase, just one. The tag read Anderson. But on the cartoon backpack, Daniel spotted faint faded letters written in pen. M.L. The rest was rubbed off, but it wasn't Anderson. It wasn't even close. Different names. Different clothing. Different levels of wear and tear. Not a family, not even close. Rex sniffed around the group again, pausing when he reached the little girl. His nose brushed her sleeve and the child froze. Not in fear of the dog, but in fear of the woman seeing her react. Her eyes flicked toward Daniel again, desperate, pleading. She opened her mouth slightly, like she wanted to say something, but quickly pressed her lips together. Daniel's mind pieced the fragments together with chilling speed. Children who didn't match. A woman far too nervous. No personal belongings. Odd dynamics. Silent signals. He scanned the crowd behind them. No one trailing. No one watching the group with recognition. No signs of a real father or relative hurrying behind. Just her. Just this woman, with 3 children who behaved like they didn't know her. Rex growled again, quiet but firm. It vibrated through Daniel's boots. "Ma'am," Daniel said, his voice shifting from polite to controlled authority, "I'm noticing some inconsistencies. I need you to step aside." The woman stiffened. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Inconsistencies," she repeated, but it wasn't confusion. Her voice held fear. Daniel pointed subtly toward the girl. "That child doesn't seem comfortable. None of them do." The woman's hands clenched. "Kids get shy around officers." "No," Daniel replied calmly. "They don't get terrified." The little girl inhaled sharply, as if those words finally gave her hope. Rex took 2 firm steps forward, placing himself protectively between the children and the woman. Daniel knew now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a warning, and the little girl had been trying to send it the only way she could. The moment Daniel confronted the woman, the atmosphere around them shifted. Travelers slowed down, sensing tension without understanding it. Rex stood rigid, blocking the woman's path, waiting for Daniel's next move. The boys stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor. But the little girl... She did something completely unexpected. She stepped out of formation, just half a step, but enough to shatter the rigid structure the woman had been enforcing. Daniel noticed instantly. Rex noticed even faster. The girl's tiny shoe scraped gently against the floor as she shifted sideways, edging closer to Rex. Her hands trembled at her sides, as if she was debating something dangerous. Daniel held his breath, watching carefully, not wanting to startle her. Then, with heartbreaking bravery, she reached out her hand, small, cautious, and tapped Rex gently on the head. Not a pet, not a playful touch, a coded gesture, a signal. The same kind of signal Daniel had seen children use in hostage or abduction cases. Something subtle enough to not alert the captor, but intentional enough to reach help. Rex responded immediately. His tail stayed stiff, but he leaned ever so slightly into the girl's touch. A sign of reassurance, protection. A silent message back, "I see you. You're safe with me." The woman whipped around at the sound of the tap, her face flashing with fury she tried to hide. "Emma!" she snapped. "Emma!" The first real name Daniel had heard, but the girl didn't move back. She kept her hand on Rex, fingers curled into his fur like she was holding onto a lifeline. Daniel crouched down slightly to be at eye level. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice warm but careful. "You okay?" The girl swallowed hard. Her lower lip trembled. She opened her mouth, then quickly shut it again as if terrified of saying the wrong thing. The woman stepped forward aggressively. "She's fine," she said sharply. "She's just overwhelmed. We need to go." Rex growled, blocking her path again. Daniel stood up, his protective instinct rising. "Ma'am, you need to stay where you are." "I said she's fine," the woman repeated more forcefully. Her eyes darted, around, frantic, paranoid. "You're scaring her." "No," Daniel said quietly. "You are." Emma's eyes widened with relief. A tear slipped down her cheek, not of fear, but of release. Rex gently nudged her with his head, sensing her distress. The boys looked up now too, glancing between Daniel and the girl, silently begging for someone to intervene. Daniel turned to Emma again. "Sweetheart," he whispered, "if something's wrong, you can tell me. You're safe." Emma hesitated. Her small chest rose and fell too quickly. Then she took a tiny step forward and pressed her forehead against Rex's neck, seeking comfort, protection, and courage all at once. And in that fragile moment, she whispered something so soft Daniel almost missed it. "Please, don't let her take us." Rex's ears shot up. Daniel's heart stopped. This wasn't just a scared kid. This was a cry for rescue. And now, everything was about to explode. The moment those fragile words left Emma's lips, Daniel felt the air around them shift, like the entire terminal froze for a split second. Rex reacted first, stepping fully between the children and the woman, teeth never bared but body solid, immovable, protective. Travelers watched now, whispering, sensing the tension but not understanding its depth. Daniel straightened, his voice turning firm and procedural. "Ma'am, I'm escorting you and the children to a private screening room. Right now." The woman's face went white. "No, absolutely not. We're going to miss our flight." "That's not your concern at the moment," Daniel cut in. "Follow me." Her eyes flickered wildly, calculating escape routes, but officers from the nearby post, alerted by Daniel's subtle hand signal, were already moving in, forming a quiet perimeter around the group. The woman had no way out now. She clenched her jaw, but forced a smile. "Fine," she said through her teeth. "If that will make your dog calm down, let's just get this over with." But Daniel wasn't watching her anymore. He was watching the children. Emma stayed glued to Rex's side, her small hand gripping his fur like a lifeline. The boys moved slower, almost mechanically, as if unsure whether they were about to be punished or saved. Daniel bent slightly toward them. "You're okay," he murmured. "Just stay together." Inside the private screening room, the fluorescent lights buzzed quietly. A female officer waited to assist. The woman entered stiffly, her eyes darting between the officers, then to the small one-way glass window. She swallowed hard. "We'll start by asking a few questions," Daniel said. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "They're shy. They're just nervous." Emma stepped closer to Rex again. Daniel noticed the way she positioned herself, not beside the woman, not behind her, but away from her, seeking distance. "Kids," Daniel said gently, "do you all know this woman?" The woman jumped in instantly. "Of course they do. They're my—" But before she could finish, Rex let out a sudden sharp bark, silencing her. It wasn't random. It was a signal. Daniel turned to Emma. "Sweetheart, you can answer." Emma stared at him, her eyes filling. Then, slowly, she shook her head. A denial so small, yet so explosive. The woman's face twisted. "She's lying," she shrieked. "She's confused. She's tired." Emma flinched, clinging to Rex. The boys exchanged a terrified look. Daniel raised his hand, stopping the woman's outburst cold. "Ma'am, yelling won't help you." The woman's breathing turned fast and erratic. Sweat beaded her forehead. And in that moment, Daniel knew. They were no longer dealing with a nervous parent. They were dealing with something much darker, something Rex had sensed from the very beginning. The tension in the room grew heavier by the second. The woman paced in tight, frantic steps, wiping her palms on her coat while muttering under her breath. Emma stayed close to Rex, barely breathing, as though the world might collapse if she moved too far from him. The two boys stood near the corner, frozen, confused, scared. Daniel watched them closely. Something about the youngest boy tugged at him. He was small, maybe 4, maybe 5, with messy blonde hair and wide, glassy eyes. His hoodie sleeves swallowed his hands and he rocked on his heels, not speaking, not crying, just existing in silence. But Rex saw what Daniel didn't. The dog's ears twitched, his nose lifted, his body angled, not toward Emma now, not toward the woman, but toward the youngest boy. He sniffed the air, slow and deliberate, then let out a soft whine that made Daniel straighten. That sound wasn't aggression. It was concern. Daniel stepped forward. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, crouching near the child. "You doing okay?" The boy blinked slowly, his lips parting as though he wanted to answer but couldn't form the words. The woman snapped, "He's fine. He's just shy." But Rex didn't agree. The dog moved closer, pressing his nose gently against the boy's small shoulder. Then he pulled back and circled him, sniffing again. His chest rumbled with a quiet growl, protective, not hostile. He nudged the boy's hand once. The boy trembled. Daniel's instincts churned. Children under extreme stress released a specific combination of scents: fear, adrenaline, cortisol. Rex was trained to detect all of them. But this was different. This wasn't just fear. There was something else. Daniel leaned closer. "Buddy, can you tell me your name?" The boy swallowed, eyes flicking to Emma, then to Rex. Then he whispered, barely audible, My name isn't the one she says." Daniel froze. The woman whipped around, her face contorting. "Stop talking," she barked. Rex stepped between her and the boy instantly, growling low and hard. The woman recoiled. Daniel's voice hardened. "Ma'am, step back. Now." She clenched her fists but obeyed, retreating toward the wall, her breathing ragged. Daniel turned to the boy again. "It's okay. You're safe here." The boy's lips trembled. She said, "We're not supposed to tell." Emma stepped closer, tears brimming. "She made us say we're a family," she whispered. The woman slapped her hands over her ears. "They're lying. You don't understand." But Daniel wasn't listening to her. He was listening to Rex. The German shepherd lowered his head and pressed his body against the boy's leg, protective, grounding him. The boy sagged into Rex's neck, small fingers gripping the dog's fur like a lifeline he'd been waiting for. Daniel's chest tightened. Rex wasn't just sensing fear. He was sensing trauma. Deep, suffocating trauma. The kind no dog should ever have to detect in a child. And now Daniel understood with chilling clarity. This wasn't a travel issue. This wasn't a custody misunderstanding. This was something far darker, something the woman could no longer hide. Daniel stepped out of the screening room briefly, leaving Rex positioned protectively with the children. The moment the door clicked shut, the woman began pacing again, her breathing sharp and uneven. Emma clung to Rex, the youngest boy leaned against the dog's side, and the older boy kept glancing nervously at the woman as if expecting her to explode. Daniel walked to the security desk just outside. "Pull the last 2 hours of camera footage," he instructed the officer on duty. Specifically Gate B, Gate D, and the main arrivals corridor. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Multiple gates?" "Trust me," Daniel said. "Something's off." Within minutes, grainy footage played on the monitor, and everything snapped into place. At Gate D, the woman appeared on screen alone, no children. She checked her phone, scanned the hallway, then stepped aside behind a Agu pillar. Then the footage switched. At Gate B, the little girl, Emma, walked in holding a small suitcase. She wasn't with the woman. She was with an older couple, tourists, who seemed to be asking an airport attendant where to go. The woman approached casually, spoke briefly, then placed a hand on Emma's shoulder as if she belonged to her. The tourist seemed confused, but Emma didn't resist. She looked scared, trapped. Moments later, the woman walked away with her. Daniel's jaw tightened. Footage from Gate A played next. The two boys stood near a vending machine with a man who looked exhausted. He knelt beside the smallest boy, ruffling his hair before standing up to check the departure board. The woman slipped into the frame, spoke quickly, then pointed frantically toward a flight counter. As the man walked toward it, she grabbed the boy's hands and disappeared into the crowd. Daniel felt his blood run cold. 3 different children, 3 different gates, 3 different adults involved. None connected to the woman. He replayed the footage again, slower, and there it was. The woman's expression changed each time she approached a child. Not maternal, not concerned. Predatory. Daniel clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. He turned back toward the screening room, his steps quickening. Inside, the woman pressed herself against the far wall, shaking. The children huddled around Rex, who positioned himself like a shield. Daniel entered, holding the tablet with the footage paused. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you want to explain this?" The woman's breath hitched. Her eyes darted to the screen, then to the children. I didn't. They needed help." But Rex growled, sensing the lie before Daniel even spoke. "It's over," Daniel said. "We know what you did." The children stiffened. The woman crumbled, and the truth hung in the air like a storm ready to break. For a moment, the room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. The woman's back slid down the wall until she crouched on the floor, her hands shaking violently. She was trapped by evidence, by witnesses, and most dangerously, by the truth she could no longer bend. But Daniel wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at Emma. The little girl stood beside Rex, small shoulders rising and falling with shallow breaths. Her fingers were buried in Rex's fur like she was holding on to the only safe thing she'd had in days. The boys hovered close too, eyes wide, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell them what would happen next. Daniel crouched down, keeping his voice gentle. "Emma, sweetheart, no one here will hurt you. Not anymore. You can talk to me. You're safe." Emma bit her lip so hard it turned white. Her eyes flicked to the woman, fast, terrified, then immediately away. She shook her head. Rex nudged her softly, encouraging her. Emma's throat bobbed in a swallow. She told us, Not to say anything, she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand, but she doesn't control you now. You can tell the truth. Emma hesitated again. She looked at the two boys, one trembling, one holding his breath. Then she stepped forward, just slightly, her voice barely a fragile thread. She's not my mom. The words cracked the air like a stone hitting glass. The woman gasped. She's lying. They're confused. Daniel held up a hand to silence her. Go on, Emma. Emma wiped her eyes, trying to be brave. I was with my grandparents. I went to get a drink, and she came. She said they needed me at the counter. She told me to hurry. A tear slid down her cheek. But when I looked back, my grandparents were gone. I tried to tell her, but she squeezed my arm and said I had to stay quiet. One of the boys spoke up, voice trembling. She said the same to us. She took us from our dad. He went to ask someone for help. When he turned around, she had us. The littlest boy's chin quivered. She said she'd hurt us if we cried. Daniel felt anger coil hot in his chest. Rex growled softly again, protective, furious in his own disciplined way. Emma took a shaky breath. I tried to tell someone. I tried to signal the dog. My dad. He told me once, dogs know when you need help. Rex pressed his head into her side, sensing her breaking. Daniel nodded, voice gentle but filled with steel. You did the right thing, Emma. All of you did. And in that moment, with a single trembling confession, the entire nightmare finally began to unravel. As the children's trembling voices filled the room, Daniel felt a cold, heavy realization settle in his chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a panicked mother. This wasn't even a simple abduction. It was a coordinated scam, a sophisticated one, and somehow these three children had been caught in the center of it. Outside the screening room, additional officers arrived, alerted by Daniel's report. A detective stepped forward. We got a hit, he said quietly. This woman's face matches footage from 2 other airports. Same pattern. Kids go missing for minutes, then reappear with her. Daniel's stomach tightened. Inside, the woman curled into herself, hands shaking violently. You don't understand, she whispered. They needed children. I didn't have a choice. Daniel's jaw clenched. Children for what? She didn't answer, so the detective did. There's a scam ring working airports nationwide. They use stolen identities and fake family documents to fly kids under the radar. They sell the family package to criminal groups trying to transport children undetected. Emma gasped, pulling closer to Rex. The smallest boy whimpered. Even the older boy's face paled. Daniel felt heat pulse behind his eyes. Anger, protectiveness, disbelief. You were trying to board a flight with kids who aren't yours, he said, voice steady but deadly calm. The woman squeezed her eyes shut. I was paid to move them. Just to the next airport. Someone else picks them up. I swear I wasn't going to hurt them. You already did, Daniel said sharply. You took them from their families. Rex growled again, not loud, but low and chilling, expressing what Daniel couldn't. The detective continued. 3 missing child reports were filed in the last hour. Each child was last seen with a different adult. All descriptions match these kids. Emma's breath hitched. My grandparents. They must be so scared. The older boy whispered, My dad will be looking for us. The youngest boy clung to Rex like he had known him his whole life. The woman began to sob. It wasn't supposed to be this complicated. They said kids don't talk. They said no one notices kids at airports. Daniel's voice hardened. Rex noticed. The woman looked up, eyes wild. A dog ruined everything. Daniel stood taller. No, a dog saved everything. Behind him, officers prepared restraints. The scam had been cracked open, the operation exposed, and the woman, the link between missing children and a larger underground network, was finally cornered. But Daniel wasn't done, because 3 children still needed to go home, and their families had no idea their nightmare was about to end. The moment the woman was escorted out of the screening room, the atmosphere transformed. What had been a space filled with fear and confusion suddenly felt lighter, still fragile, still trembling, but no longer suffocating. Rex stayed close to the children, positioning his body like a protective wall. Emma leaned into his side, her small fingers gripping his fur the way someone clings to air after being underwater too long. "Let's get them somewhere safe," Daniel said quietly. Officers guided the children to a family assistance room. Soft lighting, warm chairs, blankets. Emma curled up with Rex on the floor, her head resting on his shoulder. The youngest boy clung to Rex's tail like it was the only anchor he trusted. Even the older boy finally allowed himself to breathe. A female officer knelt beside them. "We've contacted your families," she said gently. "They're on their way." Emma's eyes filled instantly. "My grandparents?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart." Her lip trembled. "Will they be mad?" Daniel knelt in front of her, shaking his head. "No, they'll just be glad you're safe." Minutes passed like slow, steady heartbeats. Officers came and went, the hallway outside buzzing with urgency, calls to partner airports, coordination with investigators, alerts sent nationwide. The scam operation was unraveling faster than the woman could have imagined, but inside the room, everything was still. Everything was precious. Then came the moment. The door burst open and a sob broke the silence. "Emma!" An older woman rushed in, tears streaming down her face, followed by a gray-haired man who looked like he hadn't taken a full breath since the moment the girl disappeared. Emma shot up, running into their arms. Her tiny body shook with relief as they crushed her between them, kissing her hair, whispering her name over and over as if saying it would undo their nightmare. I thought, her grandmother choked. "I'm here," Emma cried. "I'm safe." The boys watched from the corner, eyes wide, hopeful, unsure. Then another knock sounded. A man sprinted inside, eyes wild with fear until they landed on the 2 boys. The oldest boy ran to him immediately, clinging to him so hard the man stumbled back. He dropped to his knees, hugging both boys at once, his breath breaking into sobs. My boys. My boys." The youngest boy finally let go of Rex and threw himself into his father's arms. The man held them like he was afraid they might disappear if he blinked. Daniel stood, back, letting the reunions flow around him. These were moments officers lived for, moments that justified the worst days on the job. Emma pulled away from her grandparents just long enough to whisper, "The dog saved us." Her grandmother turned to Daniel, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. But Daniel shook his head, looking at Rex, calm, noble, watchful. "He saw what none of us could," Daniel said. "Your brave girl asked for help, and he answered." Rex's tail wagged just once as if understanding the gratitude in the room. 3 children were safe. 3 families were whole again, and the nightmare they had lived through was finally over. The families gradually settled, holding their children close as if they would never let go again. Officers stepped out to finish paperwork, the chaos of the investigation echoing faintly through the hallways. But inside the assistance room, there was calm, a kind of fragile peace that only comes after disaster has been narrowly avoided. Rex lay beside Emma, finally relaxed, his head resting gently on her lap. She stroked his fur softly, as if memorizing the feeling of safety. Daniel watched her, sensing there was still something she hadn't said. After a moment, Emma looked up at him. "Officer Daniel?" she whispered. Daniel crouched beside her. "Yes, sweetheart?" She took a shaky breath. Do you know why I touched him? The signal I gave? Daniel nodded gently. I figured it was a sign you needed help. Emma shook her head. No, it was something my dad taught me. Her grandparents stiffened. The grandmother brushed Emma's hair back. Tell him, darling. Emma pressed her hand against Rex's neck, just like she had done earlier, but this time without fear. My dad used to work with police dogs, she said softly. Before he died. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. He told me if I ever got lost, or someone scary tried to take me, I should do a silent signal. Because police dogs can understand when people can't. Daniel swallowed, feeling a lump rise in his throat. My dad said, Emma continued, tiny voice trembling, dogs don't get fooled. They know when a kid needs help. She took a shaky breath. So I did what he taught me. I touched Rex's head. I hoped he would know. Rex lifted his head, resting it on her knee. He had known. Perfectly. Daniel felt heat sting behind his eyes. Pride, awe, gratitude all mixed together. You were so brave, he whispered. Your dad would be proud. Emma smiled for the first time since he'd seen her. A real smile. Rex saved us, just like my dad said a dog would. Her grandfather placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. You and your partner. You gave us our world back. But Daniel shook his head, looking at Rex, his partner, his guardian, his heartbeat on 4 legs. He did it, Daniel said quietly. Rex followed a signal. Most adults would have missed. Emma hugged Rex tightly. He's my hero. Rex closed his eyes, leaning into her embrace. And in that moment, Daniel understood. The silent signal wasn't just a cry for help. It was a message from a child's heart. A message only a dog like Rex could hear. This story teaches us that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it appears in the smallest actions, like a child's silent signal for help. It reminds us to trust our instincts. Speak up when something feels wrong, and look out for others who may be afraid to speak for themselves. It also shows the incredible bond between humans and trained service dogs, whose instincts can save lives when words fail. Most importantly, it highlights the responsibility of adults to protect children, recognize warning signs, and act quickly. A single act of bravery, no matter how small, can stop a great danger and save lives.